really not surprising when it comes to those CPI numbers out of Japan. Bang in line with estimates, but still a deceleration when it comes from the previous month for core prices. Having said all of this, of course, we're still far, far away from that BOJ 2% inflation target. Has the pandemic, though, sort of lessened the significance of these inflation numbers, not to mention the oil crash, of course?
You're absolutely right. Inflation, the 2% inflation target is almost the last thing on the Bank of Japan's mind right now. Everybody's working overtime, to get those new lending facilities out to the small and medium-sized companies. So it's not about the inflation numbers. It's all about the economic support for small companies.
Jesper, we have heard local media reports in Japan talk about the BOJ discussing unlimited government bond buying, replacing their current 80 trillion yen target. What are the implications of this, given that we already know they've done plenty?
Look, basically, this is a wonderful gesture, from the Bank of Japan, lifting the 80 trillion yen cap. Now, remember that technically the Bank of Japan is actually just targeting zero interest rates for the 10-year bond. And whether that takes, 20 trillion yen or 70 trillion yen, it doesn't really matter. Right now, there's a lot of pent-up demand amongst the Japanese banks, so funding the additional fiscal stimulus here in Japan is really not the problem. The more important thing about the Bank of Japan is the increased commercial paper and corporate bond buying that they're likely to be discussing on Monday's board meeting.
Yeah, and I want to throw up this chart taking a look at where we're at when it comes to BOJ holdings of Japanese government debt. We're over 40% at this point. This chart shows insurance pension funds hold about another quarter. Just about 3% are held overseas. So, there's obviously no doom gloom over the debt burden and the risks associated with that because it's so domestically held still at this point. But, does it make a difference at this point, given how extraordinary we are on the spectrum of extraordinary monetary policy that the BOJ can execute?
Look, it does make a difference in the sense of that it just confirms that they'll do whatever it takes. But as I said, the key point, this is obviously true around the world. The key point is not so much ring fencing the financial system and financial stability here. That's important, but much more important than the new element of this crisis, obviously, is getting the support out to small and medium-sized companies. That's where the Bank of Japan, has more work to do.